Hello, my name is Frederick Banker, and today I wanted to talk about my Kickstarter that's launching today and why you should support the national release of my book, The South China Sea War, The War No One Should Want. So the book is about what's going on in the South China Sea, mainly the militarization of the region and the main players at play, mainly America and China. We'll talk about them a little bit later, and how a war can be avoided in said region. The book will mainly cover the modern history of the South China Sea and how it affects the world, but I will delve into um, older history such as the 20th century and a little bit of the 19th century, as past events do kind of shape how the South China Sea looks today. The book is over 300 pages long and has 200 sources from scholars who have also covered the subject of the South China Sea. The main powers at play are the United States of America, China, Japan, Russia, India, Australia, and Pakistan. These are the main players that have a chapter to them. So there's a chapter on the United States, a chapter on China, Japan, Russia, so on and so forth. But there's also chapters on the minor powers as well, such as Taiwan, the Koreas, and of course Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia. They're in their own specific chapter on ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Basically, these three make up a 10-nation alliance in the South China Sea of Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei, so on and so forth. And they're kind of the neutral zone of the South China Sea. So they are one of the main spheres of influence that the United States and China are vying over. And of course, as you can see in the last post as well, this book will also cover the EU and how they're involved in the region, mainly in terms of the territory that France and Britain have in the region and the economic connections that France, Britain, Germany, they have to China and to the other nations within the region. So what is the main problem that the book covers? What is going on in the South China Sea? Well, the main problem is the overlapping territorial claims in the South China Sea, mainly with the minor powers in ASEAN, but the main cause of this is China. China has caused more tension in the South China Sea with overfishing in other nations' seas and building up military bases in artificial islands in the South China Sea. And that's because China's main goal, one of their main goals, I should say, is to take over the South China Sea itself and basically have their own control over it without having to go through any mediators through any of these nations. They believe that they are the dominating force in the region and that they should continue to dominate, you know, for for as long as they can. So why is the US involved? Well, for one thing, the US does have territories in the South China Sea from the Spanish-American War in 1898. The Philippines and Guam were from the Spanish-American War, and and that was basically like our introduction into the South China Sea and our sort of sphere of influence in that region. And speaking of the Philippines, we are treaty bound to Japan and the Philippines to defend them if they were attacked in a war, which is why it's important to look at China, because China has sour relations with Japan and the Philippines due to their own overlapping territorial claims in the South China Sea, especially with the Philippines. They've been having trouble with the overfishing in the region and China claiming parts of the Philippines as theirs. And China's overall goal is to kick the United States out of the region so they can be the sole major power. If you know anything about World War II history, you know that this is kind of a page out of the Imperial Japanese book. The co-prosperity sphere was basically to kick out the foreign powers so that the Imperial Japanese can take control. Well, that's what the Communist Chinese want to do in the South China Sea, is to kick out any player that can be a threat to them, such as the United States or Japan or anyone else, and basically become the hegemon of the South China Sea. But of course, why should you care about the South China Sea? Well, for one thing, the South China Sea is one of the biggest trade hubs in the world. No matter what it is, food, energy, raw resources, everybody has stakes, economic stakes in the South China Sea, as it's one of the richest trade routes in the world. And so if that gets cut off, if a war heavily damages, people's ability to get, food, energy, or raw resources, that a lot of people are going to be in trouble. And this is not just with the South China Sea, but with anybody that relies on trade in that region. And going forward, the region is expected to grow economically up to the 2040s, and this includes manpower, population. And of course, you can't really have, a growing population when you have a major nation overfishing your waters, because now you lose a big source of what makes up a diet of an island nation, or people of an island nation, such as the Philippines or Indonesia. Because you can imagine without fish, you don't really have that main source of protein that a lot of these people rely on. And of course, most of the major world powers, such as the United States, China, India, Japan, Russia, and the EU, they all rely one way or the other with the South China Sea. Because without it, then they lose a big economic artery in the global trade world. Without it, they don't really have, the economic advantage that all these other nations have. So what is the purpose of this book? Well, I feel like the mainstream media has done a poor job with delving into this topic, and I wanted to make a book dedicated on it so people can know, what's going on, what to look out for, and how a war can be avoided, because I do think a war can be avoided in the region. And I think it would be important for us, as in, people who have a stake in the region one way or the other, should focus on it. And if we have the power to vote, then to vote for the leaders that will keep the region of the South China Sea as stable and as peaceful as humanly possible. And of course, with all the powers at play, with pretty much every major power in the world focused on the South China Sea, it becomes difficult to, you know, ignore the fact that if a war does come, if a major war were to occur in the South China Sea, then that is going to have long-term consequences not just for that region, but the world. Because everybody has invested in that region, everybody either has territory or people in that region, whether it be military personnel with the United States in or in South Korea and Japan, or whether it be France with French Polynesia not being too far from what would be kind of like the battlefield or the theater of war, basically. And so a lot of lives would be on the line, and so we need to avoid this war as much as possible. So what is my Kickstarter about? Well, good news is that the book got finished and is being published and is going to go through a nationwide release in August 2026. I will need additional funds to see this release into fruition, and so I would be very happy if you're willing and able to help me out and see this dream of mine come true. So what do you get from supporting my project? Well, all reward tiers will let you have your name in the acknowledgement segment of my book. So if you know anything about, the beginning, you know that there's a special thanks segment of the book for family, friends, and colleagues. If we're talking about college, then this would be kind of your name in that segment. You will have your name on the segment of acknowledgments where you and all the others that have supported my book will have your name because you played a part in making sure that this book comes out there, that the knowledge that this book provides gets out there for everyone to see. For the 10, 20, and $30 tiers, you will get an advanced copy of the ebook, softcover, and hardcover versions of the book, respectively, and that will also include the acknowledgments. And for the $40 and $50 tiers, you will get a signed advanced softcover and hardcover of the book, but you also get your chance to suggest a subject for me to cover for my YouTube channel with a 5 to 10 minute video for my YouTube channel. I only ask, of course, if this subject or your suggestion revolves around history and political science, or I should say, and or political science. I'm not afraid to research your topic. I just ask that it covers history and political science because that's kind of what my YouTube video is about, or what my YouTube channel is about, and what I went for. I went to college for history and political science. And of course, an important note, all physical rewards, such as the softcover and hardcover of the book, will only be shipped within the United States. This is something important in case you are from overseas, then I'd highly suggest you only go for the advanced copy of the ebook and just kind of go from there. But I'd like to thank everyone for listening in on this. Be sure to check out the link in the description for my Kickstarter, and let's make sure that this book, let's make sure that this national release gets into fruition. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Stay blessed, and if you know anybody who's interested in this, make sure that they know. Make sure if you know anybody who's interested in political science, history, geopolitics, especially if it covers the South China Sea, then be more than happy to send this out to them. And if you have any questions, then let me know in the comments below. Have a wonderful day. Bye.